Ross, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. So what is what are you asserting here on this? I thought it was rather interesting reading your piece, but put a little bit meat on the bones for our listeners and our viewers, Ross.
Yeah, well, I mean, for many years, Ireland has sort of posed as this human rights citadel on the hill, as it, asserts this sort of high standards in human rights, which it's sort of, asserting that Britain doesn't possess. For years, of course, we've had this problem with migrants crossing the Channel from France, and the EU has been sort of particularly unhelpful about that, and France and neither France nor the EU want us to return migrants who've crossed the Channel back to France. But suddenly the boot is on the other foot, because we've now got migrants crossing from the UK to the Republic of Ireland and claiming asylum there. And suddenly the Irish public are very unhappy about this. The Irish government is very unhappy about this. They've got numbers that they're, struggling to cope with, and we've got sort of tent encampments in Dublin and so on. And funnily enough, Irish public have turned out to be just as concerned about the numbers of illegal migrants arriving there as British public have been concerned about the number of illegal migrants arriving in Britain. I mean, now to me, the way to sort this out would be to impose the rules of what was called the Dublin Protocol, where if you want to claim asylum, you have to do it in the first safe country which you reach, and if you don't make it there, well, you're not eligible to make the claim in any other country, safe country you subsequently travel to. So I mean, in terms of the situation we've got in Europe now, well, if you arrived in Italy, you arrived in France, you arrived in Greece, you'd have to make your claim there. If you travelled on to sort of Northern Europe, you wouldn't be able to make a claim. But you see, the EU has tried to resist that because, for a long time, the flow was just in one direction, and France was quite happy to be rid of some of the asylum applicants. Now, now they're flooding into the Republic of Ireland. So something's rather changed.
So this is the hoist of their own petard moment.
Yes, yeah, I'd be all happy for return, migrants who've gone to the Republic of Ireland from Britain to be returned here, if, that is, the EU would accept migrants who've travelled here from other EU countries to be returned there. But of course, what the Irish seem to want is not that really. They just want the sort of one-way traffic. It's always, Britain's always got to be the loser in these kind of things.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that Ireland and I guess Scotland as well. I can sort of almost, well, I can remember Leo Varadkar being, an obvious example of a man who was only too happy to preen his virtuous whiskers at any given moment, Ross. He seemed to dine out on this. And I always say, I said it to Julia yesterday, any politician that uses the term or the word progressive, frankly, it should never be allowed to stand for office. It doesn't really mean very much, but they think it means everything. We had Humza in Scotland saying, we're a progressive country. Almost like a Scandinavian country. Can you think of anything less Scandinavian than Scotland? Scotland has its own identity, and thank goodness for that. And similarly with Ireland, I think they tried the same thing there. It's almost as if we're not like the UK, we're a welcoming, very modern, forward-thinking place. We've got it all worked out with our net zero and our immigration policy. And now the chickens are coming home to roost.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's true. And of course, Ireland, it's of claim to this sort of human rights superiority comes through partly through Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland, who then subsequently became a special commissioner for human rights with the UN, and still goes traveling the world sort of lecturing us on the evils of climate change and how it's all the fault of the rich world and the poor world and so on. Ireland has always, in modern times, has always been at the sort of trying to make this progressive assertion that it's at the the height of human rights, and on Gaza as well. Ireland was the one country in Europe which tried to prevent the EU from making well, when the EU wanted to make a statement to condemning the Hamas attacks the 7th of October,
Yeah.
Ireland tried to stop it and say, well, we want the statement to say, Israel should not retaliate and so on. Well, if you're going to be attacked in the way that Israel was on the 7th of October,
Sure.
of course you've got to respond in some way. Completely ridiculous. But, that's typical sort of Irish moral posturing on the part of the Leo Varadkar's government,
Yeah.
which is indeed come home to roost.
Yeah, they didn't seem to ever, and this is one of the sort of irritating things, and it is deeply irritating, Ross, of kind of a certain brand of politician where they can't for 1 second imagine a scenario where they might be wrong on something.
No, exactly. Well, Leo Varadkar's, of course, not there anymore, and the reason he left office is because he had this referendum wanting to change the Irish constitution in one or two sort of woke and progressive ways, and he lost it. And rather than accept that, he sort of decided he'd resign. It wasn't the job for him anymore. But
listen, while you're with us, Ross, an area that is firmly your territory, that of net zero. In fact, your book is called Not Zero, which examines the lunacy of much of this almost religion that seems to be taking hold in many governments around the world. But I noticed today that Claire Coutinho, the Energy Secretary, has said that net zero is damaging businesses. Was this a rare moment, a departure from the official script from the Energy Secretary?
Have they only just worked that out? It's extraordinary. I mean, this whole net zero thing was nodded through the House of Commons without even a vote in 2019. I mean, anybody who knew anything about what it would involve could tell you that it was going to harm business, because we have this net zero target, which is only a target of territorial emissions, not global emissions. And what the government's done by sort of wrapping itself in this net zero target is to give itself this very powerful incentive to offshore our emissions, close down industries in Britain and shunt the carbon emissions abroad. So, they come elsewhere in the world, China, Malaysia, and so on, and we import goods instead. Well, that's been going on. We've lost our primary steel industry for this reason. We've lost fertilizer industry. We're losing our petrochemical industry. You think of Grangemouth closing, becoming a sort of purely a terminal for importing petrochemicals. Well, this is a direct result of the net zero target and this perverse incentive. And well, it's good that Claire Coutinho has pronounced this now, but we've had years of damage to the economy through this net zero target, and for now the net zero target remains in place. And I wish that Claire Coutinho could explain to us how we're going to carry on, trying to meet that target without it damaging British industry, because it can and it will.
Indeed. Ross, lovely as ever to have you on with us and to gauge your very qualified and illuminating thoughts on these issues.